Scanning. Control. Manipulate scientific data. Take over. Blast. Control. World government. Shut down infrastructure. Ship everything to China. Just look at this person.
And hey, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the XFL Infowars show. It is Dave and Greg, and we took a week off last week for a number of reasons, mostly for me because I needed to kind of step away from the computer, and also, too, it kind of gave us an opportunity for this week to kind of compare and contrast the XFL from last week to this week, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. Dave, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. I was I'm waiting right now for our recording to get interrupted by it's election season here in Japan, and they do campaigns differently. Obvious, much different than we do them back home. But yeah, trucks drive around literally with loudspeakers and scream out slogans. It's like you mentioned to me before we hit the record button, it's much like that scene in Blues Brothers where they have the big they're going around telling everybody where to go see the concert at, and with the loudspeaker on the truck. So yeah, you see a lot of that here, and that's kind of the cool thing here about the way life is. I mean, elections last a short while. Elections last a short while. You hear slogans. I don't know, and that's a nice thing too. Here, I can tune out politics. It's awesome. I mean, I'm more tuned in, unfortunately, as to what's going on back home. But at least I can. I don't have cable. I cut the cord. We're here, so we don't have. I mean, I have internet, so I can pick and choose what I want to watch. And so I go to my standard. I watch either CBS or NBC Nightly News on either YouTube or the CBS app. And then I watch the Kimmel monologue on YouTube daily. And now I'm going to go back to the Daily Show because now things are kicking into high gear. So between that, I get all the information I need, other than also too what pops up on my phone. So, and so I don't know. That's just kind of the awesome thing about living here. I'm never quite out of touch, but there are days where I can literally go, I'm glad I'm not home. And after everything that's going on in New York the last couple days, I'm like, oh, it's popping all up on my Facebook feed too. So I posted one thing, a meme. It was a joke, and people lost their goddamn minds. I've laid off my XFL memes because it's like, I'm like, if I do, I can only pound on the league and the Rock so much. But I'm here to tell you, I don't think I told you this, but I have gotten banned from countless XFL fan page groups for my memes, just commenting on attendance and where are the people? Where are the people? So anybody who's out there who's listening that's banned me, hey, thank you, because I kind of take that as a validation that I'm getting the point across. And but yeah, it's talking about the league itself. I mean, last week when we talked, or wasn't 2 weeks ago now. 2 weeks ago when we talked, I misspoke when I was talking about people in the United States watching TV the old-fashioned way. Well, after we hit the stop button, I kicked everything out. I went back and I did some research, and I did not realize that how many people are switching over to antenna the old-fashioned way of cutting the cord. So I did not realize that, and I misspoke. And anybody out there got pissed off at me for not, hey, I wish people would have called me out on it, because that would have been at least let us know people are listening too. That would have been kind of cool. Um, but yeah, I didn't realize how many people in the States are really cutting the cord. I know we cut the cord here, so we have an aerial and then we have the internet. Um, yeah, so but with that said, the XFL was on ABC and had for the XFL this version had relatively decent ratings.
Oh no, yeah, certainly. And they had some good time. I mean, I, I thought they were able to get some good time slots. I mean, the Saturday 1 p.m. really wasn't much competition at that time that
Right.
day for the Seattle Orlando game, and it was a good game.
Yeah.
Um, and then they followed up with the traditional Sunday afternoon, the San Antonio Arlington game, which I mean it was a close score wise. Um, I know I'm not sure necessarily if it was a 15-9 was an entertaining game. It was close. Well, they had very good ratings. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what I mean. It's a Sunday afternoon. That's a traditional time people tune in to watch football.
Right, too. And do you think too, I mean, weather probably affects it too a little bit because if it's nice out, especially this time of year, people are getting the hell out of the house because they've been sitting inside all winter. Like, yeah, no, I'm gonna go play with the kids or we're gonna get out and do something outside versus, sit at home and watch TV if it's a nice day. I'm just thinking for me, I know, right now it's been the other day it was nice out. I hopped on a train and went down to the ocean for about an hour.
Oh, nice.
And but if it would have been crappy, I would have been inside watching TV. So
Mhm.
I think that plays a lot into it. But just seeing you know, I was happy to see that the ratings increased. It's like, okay, well maybe going the network route is the way to go. But realistically, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be what the X happens with ultimately with the XFL though.
I mean, it'll really come down to what the network wants. I mean, Disney will have the ultimate decision on what games and when would go on ABC based on availability and how that partnership is designed. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting. I mean, we've both seen the chatter on how for next season the XFL needs more primetime games or more games on ABC. They need more games on good times on ABC or ESPN on
Yeah.
the flagship station. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree, but they're those schedules are done. I mean, they're talking. I mean, the major events are booked years and years in advance, and then it's a big puzzle when you can
Hmm.
put in programming, when you can get a 3 hour slot on a Saturday, um, depending on. I mean, granted, now we're getting past the NCAA tournament, but there's still other things, and the question will always remain. Um, at the end of the day, does ABC want to put a game on Saturday night at 7 p.m. or do they want to run a movie that has traditionally generates 4 or 5 million people to watch that movie? And that's got to be a decision that's worked out between the XFL and Disney on how they program next year. And that's
Yeah.
one of that's the negative of not of coming to the networks and looking for partners. They found a partner in Disney, but they need to figure out how that partnership will show games because I don't think anybody's thought FX was a success this year.
Right. And also too, I mean, I think too I mean, the XFL needs Disney more than Disney needs the XFL at this point. And for streaming, let's see, for streaming sports, ESPN Plus is the main player. I mean, we have CBS Sports, and I need to kind of figure that out. I think you can get CBS Sports if you have Paramount Plus too, which is something I need to figure out here with my VPN and everything as we approach football season for because I got to see my Navy games. And but yeah, I mean, I'm just yeah, the whole thing with the way the schedule's laid out and everything, it just seems like to me, and you and I have had this discussion, things just have been put together kind of at the last minute, and it just seemed like it was not well planned out. So hopefully this year they have learned, but really then we have the issue too then of the ratings for this week that completely tanked. Yes, I mean they were not on ABC, but they were on channels that a lot of people still have. But then it goes back to the other discussion we had about people cutting the cord. How many people, cable subscribership is declining, satellite dish is declining because nobody wants to pay those damn fees. And obviously regional networks are dying too. So, yeah, I mean, aside from them going to say like a side channel for those who, okay, so here's the thing for those people that are listening, and hopefully it's a lot more than five people, and we have more than five people listening, but I always like to joke about that. But if you've got an aerial and you've got a TV, you've got side channels, not just, it's not like the old days where you got five channels. I mean, you literally have 50 some channels that are available over the air. So the question is would ABC or ESPN create a side channel for a lot of the big markets? So for Chicago, for instance, I mean, I could see there come a day where ABC decides, hey, let's have a side channel for ABC, ESPN Sports to show select games. So maybe that's going to be the wave of the future. I know before you and I talked online, a shameless plug here for this kid who is called the Antenna Man on YouTube TV. So if you're thinking about cutting the cord and you don't know how to do it, go watch this kid's videos because this kid is just awesome. He loves to help people. I've learned so much from him. And much like you, man, I grew up in the day when I didn't have cable TV till I got to college. And even then there was only 50 some channels. But when I grew up, in central Illinois, we had an aerial TV. And yeah, so it's just interesting now how the old technology is coming back. That is coming back into play.
It really come down. I think it really come down to at the end of the day the number of eyes they have on it.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this a couple shows ago. How when you look at subscriber bases, there are actually more people who have FX available to them than ESPN.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really will come down to as long as the deal with Disney is good,
right?
I don't see them going. I mean, good being whatever that means. Is Disney paying them and they're getting ad space, or they're getting it? Like, I don't know what the deal is, but obviously it's a deal that they took. So how will that change from this year to next year to increase their revenue opportunities?
Yeah. 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 And then there's the other question of how the USFL is going to impact it. So it's going to be interesting looking at the numbers because on social media, XFL social media and USFL social media, everybody has become a numbers expert and a ratings expert. And yeah, I don't think I was wrong. I mean, I put it out there. I mean, Jim Larson over at XFL Newsroom put out, and he does a wonderful job. But I'm like, we got too much wishful thinking going on here. You've got to, I mean, bottom line, the numbers are low, and I know everybody is trying to be positive about things, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, to me, I want people to ask the hard questions, and it just doesn't seem like anybody is asking the hard questions to the league. You don't hear anything from Dany coming out other than PR spin. I mean, to use a comparison. So right now, fortunately, we don't have anything in the XFL that's happening with my beloved Cardinals right now. Because right now in Arizona, you've got a situation that's about blowing up. And it's going to be, if Roselle, that tells you how old I am, man. if Goodell doesn't doesn't do what he needs to do on this, and obviously this is just in the beginning phases, and just puts out a lot of PR spin, people are going to call him out.
I mean, it's if they have, I guess I look at it like the whole situation with the Commanders.
Yeah.
Once you're able to get 24 owners who wants him out,
Mm-hmm.
then you got change.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, from the time of Rozelle to the time of Goodell, the power structure within the NFL has changed where Pete Rozelle was stronger than the owners.
Yeah.
To where now the owners saying, look, you do what we want,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get rewarded, which he's
Right.
getting handsomely rewarded because they're all getting handsomely rewarded
Mm-hmm.
by all the dealers doing. So Goodell is basically the mouthpiece, and he can do so much.
Yeah.
He can do so much. I mean, there's no owner. I mean, the whole Commanders thing is just a just a just a
It's clusterfuck.
Well, it's a complete example of how all these owners are all so protective of themselves because if this happens to this guy, it could happen to me.
Right.
So they're all, regardless of the horrible things Daniel Snyder has done over the course of his ownership, they're all going to do the best they can to protect him until it's not benefiting them to protect him anymore, which it isn't. And now it's at the point where you got to go.
Yeah.
And he's got to go under the fact of we got to get XYZ because this also affects all of us. So they're gonna let him cash out and make $5 or $6 million compared to what he paid for or $5 or $6 billion for what he paid for the team.
Right.
Because that's gonna look favorably for the rest of them. Like it's wild. It's just a wild situation where they look after each other until it's not beneficial to look after each other.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, the Arizona thing is just I saw that, I was just like, wow. Like
well,
it's
I don't know. I mean, that's the whole. It's my team, and I'm. It's funny because Joe Zimba just sat down with the Cardinals about their history and everything, and then I saw that pop up, and I haven't talked to Joe about his thoughts on. And Joe is such a gentleman. I mean, he's so focused on history that
yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't have any thoughts. But then you look at it through the lens of history, and it's like, man, just how far have we come? But then again, I'm thinking, has this always been? I mean, there's always been shenanigans with the owners too. I mean, Rosenblum, um, Carol Rosenblum, who else? Hiatus. I mean, there's always been something. But now we live in such a day and age where everything's out in the open and everything's legal too. So I mean, cameras in the courtroom were unheard of.
I mean,
20 years ago.
There's so many people that work for the team now.
Yeah.
So you're looking at hundreds of people where, say, in the 70s it was 30.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I will gladly take back if it's not true, but shenanigans were happening in the 60s and 70s and 80s, just like it's happening today. Obviously, not on the economic scale that it is today,
Right.
but it was also a lot easier to bury.
Yeah. Yeah, you could sweep so much under the rug. The whole cocaine problem is a good example. That got swept up under the rug till they couldn't ignore it anymore. Same with gambling. And what did the NFL do? Embrace gambling. But they couldn't have embraced gambling, say, 40 years ago when the players' salaries sucked. So they're only able to embrace gambling because of there's more financial disincentive for these guys to get involved with gambling now than it is to get involved with gambling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think there's also a societal change in how you look at gambling.
Right.
Some from say where it was in the '60s when Paul Hornung and Alex Karras were getting sucked up in that, to where it is today. It was, I mean, even Pete Rose. You look at that, and that's just around 40 years ago now. How that looked, it was a gambling was looked upon as evil.
Yeah.
And now gambling is looked upon eating breakfast.
Yeah, it's just we've come so far. Hey, we've come so far.
but tying it back into what you're saying about the XFL, and they've been very selective.
Yeah.
And what they've said, who they said it to. Like I said, I love to find that USA Today story. I think I might have sent some to you when there's got to be a connection there some way, like, because it was such an interesting article in the aspect. It was such a glowing endorsement of the league, and no one else has covered it. I would have expected, if I would have saw that, like 4 or 5 more outlets pick up something, like
right,
ESPN sending someone out there, like whoever that would be, to do something else on a sports center. You know how they break up sports centers, they do like these little stories or something like that. But
yeah,
it was just a weird one-off that was not like picked up. Usually,
I'm reading that article. I'm like, okay, where did this come from? Okay, it must have been a slow news day. But then you just go into detail, and it's like, this looks like this was written by one of the news hub organizations. And I'm like, okay, because that happened. Mark Perry put out an article about who is Dwayne Johnson, and it was a glowing, and it's like, all right, dude, come on, stop. I mean, we know who he is. Why are you writing this? What is the point of this article? And that's kind of how, I mean, but I know the point of the reason why XFL News Hub does things the way they do. But with USA Today, I don't get where they were coming from, because it didn't ask. Again, I like hard hitting sports journalism. You and I both grew up in a day and age where, let's face it, for as much as abrasive as he was, Howard Cosell always asked the hard questions, or at least he tried to. Obviously, the dude had a lot of issues, and but when he did an interview with somebody, he wasn't afraid to ask them the hard question. But you get now with sports journalists, especially when it comes to the XFL, nobody's asking the hard question. It's like, okay, these numbers suck. Why? I mean, again, we know streaming, everybody says, well, we don't know what the streaming numbers know. And that's true. We don't know what they are, but okay, so for instance, let's talk about, the ABC thing. I have yet to read anywhere from anybody explaining, talking about the antenna issue. Okay, more people are going to streaming now and have an antenna, but nobody's talking about that. Okay, so there's definitely, I'm sure there's a correlation here, but nobody's talking about it, other than, well, people are cutting the cord, it'll be on ABC and more viewers. Well, explain why that is, because dummy me sitting over here going, okay, well, if you have a cable or satellite package, ABC's, it's no harder to find an ABC channel than it is, say, FX. So I think, people, including myself, before, everybody gives their opinion. That's the bad and good and bad thing about social media. Everybody has a right to their opinion.
Yeah.
But, like me, when I was spouting off here, it's like, well, okay, I didn't do my research. I didn't realize how many people were cutting the cord. And that I would like to see an article on, hey, more people are cutting a cord. So yeah, it would make more sense for the XFL to be on network TV. But I don't quite, but then, you read an article like that in USA Today that is just so glowing. It basically looked like it was a paid PR piece.
Yeah.
And even too, I'm pulling up here over at NFL Draft Diamonds. The headline is XFL TV ratings are impressive in week 7, considering they were going head to head with hang on, I don't get the full. I'm pulling it up here. Considering they were going head to head with NCAA Women's National Championship. And I got to give them credit. At least they responded to my tweet. And their response was, "Hey, well, Greg, hitting $500,000 on a night when the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship hit 9 million is very damn impressive, if you ask me." And I'm like, "Well, those are rookie. I mean, I don't know. I mean, 5,000. I mean, that 5,000 to me represents the base for the XFL. That doesn't represent. I mean, they're 9 million, and I guess that's just kind of my frustration here. I mean, if the XFL wants to attract they need the casual viewer. They need new people. They don't. They already have the base. Everything's already baked in. It's kind of like, I hate even bringing up politics, but everybody talks about, well, he's firing up the base. Well, he doesn't need the base to get elected. He's got those votes. It's the other people. It's the independents. It's the casual fans that in order for a league to stick around, and that's what the NFL has been able to do, and even the CFL has been able to do over the years, attract more than the hardcore fan. And the XFL just isn't there yet. But they've got, we've got some, good competition. All the games have been competitive. Hell, that Defenders game, against Orlando, you can't ask for any more entertaining than that. But, all I see on social media and all I hear about are, and again, when not watching the games, because when you're watching the games, they're actually talking about the players. They're talking about everybody's story. But we don't see enough about these kids in the media. I think XFL News Hub is doing themselves a disservice by not, and even the other XFL, news people, start writing more stories on the players. Let me know what their story is. Instead of your glowing reviews of the Rock and Dany. I don't care at this point. I want to know who these kids are, because at some point you're going to see them at, say, the NFL. It's like, oh yeah, I remember him. I remember him when he played for the XFL. And I would say the same with the USFL. I mean, the USFL is a different entity. It's not, it's not all about one or two people. It seems. I mean, we know. Yeah, it seems it's more of a team effort than, whereas the XFL, it's basically centered around a cult of personality. But that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the XFL has stuck to what they said they were going to do earlier.
Right.
They said we're going to focus on the football,
mm-hmm.
and they have.
Yeah.
And I think they've put a good product on the field.
Yeah, they have.
Now, the criticism to that then is, you focused on football,
mm-hmm.
you delivered on that, but there's nothing behind it.
Right.
And you talked about, it's like, the AJ McCarron story was a very, very nice story, but they've had no follow-up from that. Like,
right.
They've kept, every time he goes to the end zone and sees his kid, there's another story written about it. There are good players, and I think, I don't know the size of staff, but I think, hopefully looking into year 2, which they already announced, is they keep some fluidity to the rosters where they're keeping some people they can develop this.
Mm-hmm.
Develop who the star running backs, because I understand there's a hesitation to devote a lot of time to the top players of the league for fear of losing them. But I look at it as the feather in your cap.
Yeah.
Like the USFL last year, the MVP, tremendous athlete,
mm-hmm.
incredible athlete, signed with the Dallas Cowboys, made the Pro Bowl. Like, you you can't you can't ride that story enough. This is a guy who didn't get the opportunity, came to the USFL, got that opportunity, showed what he can do, made the like signed a multi-year deal with the Cowboys, and then made the Pro Bowl. Like,
Yeah.
They were hammering that story all year long, and that's where I don't see that on the XFL side. And I've seen some criticism where the teams aren't necessarily practicing, like they're playing games there, and they're not building that connection to the cities or the communities. And I understand they're trying to be cost effective as well.
Yeah.
But I think they really need to, now they delivered on the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
They need to figure out a way to try and connect with the communities, the football fan in general,
right?
Who these players are, like who is like, and the diehards of minor league football know who Luis Perez is.
Right.
They know who the main players are.
Yeah.
The Ben DiNucci's. Like you can go through a list of a solid 50 people that everybody's that people who follow minor league football know.
Mm-hmm.
But those names are not necessarily the top players in this league. Like the XFL, just like the USL, they're looking to develop that 22, 23, 24-year-old, because the 27, 28, 29-year-old statistically is not going to get that opportunity back with the NFL.
Right.
So it's what they can do to get that interest in not necessarily who the Houston Roughnecks are, but who the players are wearing that helmet. And I personally like to see a lot more being done with that to grow it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they would be wise too. And this is kind of, you've got okay, so a site like XFL News Hub, why doesn't the XFL, and this is just, I don't know, believe me, Mark Perry and I are definitely not talking, but to me, it would make sense for the XFL to contract out with an XFL News Hub that has invested a significant amount of time and money into covering the league. And I got to give them credit, because they have. I mean, I don't understand the economics behind it, and I don't understand what the profit, if there is any profit margin, but the XFL has a core group of fans that they're not leveraging. And to use a site like, say XFL News Hub, I mean, they do PR, I mean, for the league for free. And I think they're doing themselves a disservice by not leveraging the assets that are out there. XFL News Hub, XFL Newsroom. Obviously I don't want them to use us, because I like being a goddamn independent and being able to speak my own mind. But you've got fan sites out there that I think if the XFL really wants to grow beyond its base, it's got to leverage the assets it has. And I mean, same way with the CFL. I bitch and moan about the CFL all the time. They've got all these fans out here that are willing to give, time and energy to the league, but the CFL doesn't leverage the assets it has. But then again, too, I mean, you can really say that about a lot of the other leagues too. The MLB. Can't say that about the Nippon Professional Baseball League here, because baseball is a true religion here. So they don't need any more. I mean, their marketing, they do need help marketing the game more. But it's a league that's been around forever. But when it comes to the XFL, I think there's a whole. I mean, they could grow the league, and they could do, like you said, tell the stories that need to be told by leveraging those assets that they have that don't really cost them anything. And that's to go into guys, and maybe they already have gone to Mark Perry or have gone to the guys at XFL Newsroom and leverage those assets. But at the same time, for the news organizations out there covering the XFL, they got to ask the hard fucking questions and not just kick out PR spin And obviously with the ratings, I mean, we're kind of seeing that now where people that are reporting on the ratings don't have much to say. They always focus in on the one positive and blow that up, and then you're looking at the rest. It's kind of like, and I always harp on, my career, my past career. I was an Intel when I was an Intel officer and analyst. If I would to go up, okay, so you just take those numbers that we have in attendance, and I give those to, let's say a two-star admiral or general, and I tell them, hey, yeah, ignore all this, but here's the positive.
Yeah.
I would be torn to fucking shreds. And I say that because it happened to me when I emphasize the positive and basically ignore, dismiss the negative. Yeah, no, I mean, people can kind of see through that. And that's the frustrating part. And I'm sure people that are huge NFL fans have already seen through that. It's like, okay, yeah, I know I'd love to watch the game, but there's nobody at the stadium. And I'm reading all this glowing stuff. I mean, obviously, the product in the field is actually pretty decent. It's gotten better. But again, to capture the interest of more than just the XFL fan base, which is very, very hardcore and passionate, yeah, you need to do a little bit more work. And that's just me, but I've been beating on that drum for a long time. But hopefully somebody's going to listen. Hopefully somebody's going to, because they don't lack for money. It's not like they can't afford hiring staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just, as I say, I think they came into this season with a plan of, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to see how it goes. I think they've accomplished everything that they've set out to.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do anything. You can't guarantee any kind of ratings or any kind of attendance, but everything else, it seems like they followed through on everything.
Yeah.
It seems like the players, the coaches, the teams are you don't hear any grumblings on anything.
No, and everybody's getting paid too. So that's the other part.
So I mean, I think at the end of the day, I feel like a broken record. It's try and limit the losses where you can.
Yeah.
Take good notes and regroup and finding out what they can do to raise revenue, cut costs on something else. Like, they're a startup, so obviously there's going to be costs that they're not going to incur after this year.
Right.
But as with everything, the cost of all the goods and necessary things are going to go up. So they're going to save on not having to be a startup. The travel is going to cost again. Like there's just how it's going to how you move it around in your spreadsheet.
Yeah,
try and get
it's creative accounting. It's creative accounting.
Yeah, to get a black number instead of a red number.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And like you said, times I feel like I'm beating a dead, because really, bottom line is, when I turn the games on, I'm entertained. It's not like I'm watching the game. When I watch the game, I'm watching the game. I could care less about the other outside stuff. But again, it's always what kills minor league football, and especially spring football, is not what happens in between the lines. Because what happens in between the lines is good football in general. Even if it's bad football, it's still football. But it's outside the lines. And then, you and I are both old enough to remember when the USFL had their championship games on ABC.
Yeah.
Those drew great ratings. And it was, and then, but again, it wasn't what happened between the lines. It's what happened outside the lines. And here we are. And, hopefully the championship that they have, and this is where I think they completely misjudged it. The championship game should have been played in St. Louis. Now, obviously, we don't know what the details are, but I'd be curious to see what else is going on St. Louis on the day of the XFL. It could have been, it could have been very simply the Cardinals were playing at home, and maybe the Blues were playing. Maybe it was just a matter of, okay, we got too many things going on downtown St. Louis. And downtown St. Louis is not comparatively, again, my yard marker is downtown Chicago. It is not that big. So maybe that played into it too. I mean, that's something I'd have to look at the schedule. But yeah, I think if they could have gotten in St. Louis, I think that would have been because you would have had all those XFL Battlehawk fans going to the championship game.
Yep. Like I said, there could be a huge convention in town tying up the hotels. I mean, there's so many different scenarios. I mean, San Antonio could have said, "Look, we'll give you the building just about rent free."
Yeah. That
mean,
was it. I mean, yeah, that would be interesting. And again, yeah.
I mean, 3 years ago, the last iteration, it was $100,000 a home game then for that stadium in St. Louis.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that much.
It was all it's all in the public records. It was the XFL had to pay 400, I think it was $400,000 or $500,000 up front, and then it was $100,000 a game to play in the dome.
Holy moly! I did not know that.
And it sure didn't go down in 3 years.
No.
So I'm assuming the Alma Dome is cheaper,
right?
And depending if there's a convention where the what there's so many different things like hotel availability. Can the turf be down for a week? The Cardinals, if the Cardinals are on a homestand against the Brewers or somebody, or the Cubs or somebody, like,
oh yeah, the Cubs come to town, yeah, that place,
you're looking at 50,000 people every single day, and if you're going to worry about a women's basketball game with your ratings, what's a hometown baseball game going to do? I mean, So it's those scenarios, and once again, you don't know what attendance is going to be. So when you're putting together this whole schedule, and all of a sudden you're looking at another, between all the expenses of having a championship week, of housing the two teams for the week or most of it. And the nice part too is, what we don't really look at either, is home base for the league is in Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're practicing in Arlington for the week and all you have to do is go to San Antonio, you're not having to fly 120 people from Arlington to St. Louis.
Yeah.
So I mean, probably playing in San Antonio probably
economically makes more sense. Yeah.
Probably saved them $300,000 at the end of the day, with all the expenses of having to move that whole thing up to St. Louis for a week. So who knows at the end of the day what deal they got for San Antonio.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, when you're looking at the end of the year with your pluses and minuses, do you want to take on another $300,000 in expenses, or move it to a stadium that might get a little less people, but it's safer on the pocket?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's why I'm glad again, I talked to you and I'm like, oh, it makes sense, because you've dealt with these issues. You've got more insight than I'll ever have, and that's why I always appreciate your comments on social media. It's like, oh, okay, if Dave's okay, so if it's like you're kind of my reality check, because I mean, if I'm way off base, you're gonna fucking tell me. And usually you and I are usually on the same page when it comes to a lot. Again, Twitter and Reddit are not the real world, but then there are times in XFL Reddit, man, that's a tough place to be. XFL Twitter, listen, you can't get banned on, you can only get blocked on XFL Twitter by individuals. You go on XFL Reddit and you got to behave yourself. They, you can only, it's a different world, but when I'm listen, but the discussion at XFL Reddit, it does seem to me, just based upon what I've read and kind of engaged with, that half the fan base can at least see reality in front of them. They all want it to succeed. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, but then there's the other ones like, oh no, ratings are great. This is, again, when you say ratings are great, I mean, much like with NFL draft diamonds. All right, well, yeah, it's 500,000. And again, the thing about these numbers is every game is it's not like they're competing for eyeballs. Each game it's a standalone game. So if you're usually getting the same amount of the same hardcore fans for each game. And then it's just a matter of who else is jumping on board and watching the game. So I don't, when I hear over 1 million people watch, no, bullshit. Over 1 million people didn't watch your product. Um, Again, it's how you count the number. I mean, you get creative with the numbers, but the same, there are people that live and die on the weekends to watch XFL games, and I understand that they're not baseball fans, they're not hockey fans, they're not basketball fans. They want to watch spring football. They love football. I mean, hey, if I could watch, believe me, if I lived, I live in a place that I have to, my football, I have to tune in the morning. Yeah, it's not like I can watch football in the evenings. So, if I really want to watch football, I'm going to watch football. I'm going to go out of my way to make, and I've gone out of my way to make sure that happens. Um, but I'm not the casual viewer. It's the casual viewer is the one that's flipping. Hey, let's see what else is on. Good example is like the CFL. I've heard more from people, friends that are friends of mine on Facebook. Hey, I was flipping through and found a CFL game. That's how you attract, you just by the channel flippers. And so the frustrating part I have with streaming is, yeah, I mean, it's great. Games are on streaming, but in order to but people stream games because that's what they want to watch. It's not like they're the ones just flipping the channels to see what else is on. So so that's why I'm kind of, I'm curious to see how the streaming numbers are, and maybe they will add considerable amount more, but most of the people who are streaming are the people that know what they want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's not, it's not like it's Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah.
Well, and looking at the streaming, there's how long did they actually stream it for? Those commercials that are being paid for by Disney are on ESPN Plus. I mean, half the time, I watch games on ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
I don't have ESPN. I cut the cord 7 years ago, so that's how I get it. But I usually get the same commercial over and over, or maybe
Right.
two commercials, and then I get a lot of the time where the big winter commercial break, ESPN side.
Yeah.
So, in all honesty, like the ESPN Plus is almost like a toss in by Disney and say, hey, now we're going to make this available to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really being sold or utilized in a way that it's going to be productive.
Right.
I think in looking at in revenue generation, which is at the end of the day why they're putting these games on ESPN Plus. It's not they're not doing it because they want to make it available to the masses. It's about generating revenue.
Right. Yeah.
So when the women's championship game, I thought it was funny that when the women's game was announced that it was the most viewed game on ESPN Plus, most viewed college game in ESPN Plus history. But we can't get, so obviously they are able to get the ESPN Plus numbers.
Right.
But when they aren't good, they're not going to announce them, because if they can get the women's college championship game and let everybody know that's the greatest number of people ever to watch a college game on ESPN Plus, and then never available for XFL games, that tells you something. Like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize if they were amazing, they would be announcing them.
If over 1 million people were watching the XFL on ESPN, we'd know about it.
Yeah.
At this point, and we don't. I mean, and maybe the numbers are equal to what we're seeing in the ratings, but I tend to think, and again, I've been wrong before. Hell, I was wrong last time we recorded about streaming and cutting the cord, but maybe you're getting an extra 100,000 with streaming, but yeah. But again, you're getting those 100,000 are your hardcore fans that are looking for the product. It's not I mean, we always talk about, I mean, you look at the NFL. I mean, back when the NFL first caught the imagination, it was that 58 championship game, and back then you only had 3 channels, so that night it caught on because it caught the casual viewer.
Mm-hmm.
And people, it was a big game, it was a championship game,
A great game.
and there was nothing else on. And that's how it caught the imagination, and the NFL, and the NFL turned into something, way bigger than anybody could have imagined. But those were different times, and so maybe we'll see with the XFL championship game once we get there that maybe that they'll catch magic, magic and they'll catch lightning in a bottle with the XFL, and maybe that will then rub off on the USFL, and in turn, it will start people will start become interested again in spring football.
Mm.
So,
and hopefully, and this is I'm very hypercritical of it, and I can understand why Disney is doing what they're doing. Is I think it would also help with ratings to get, I don't want to say more well-known broadcasters covering the game.
yeah.
But in today's game, it just seems like if you don't have the names
Mm-hmm.
behind the mic or in the
Right.
broadcast booth, you're not. People tune in because it's Troy Aikman.
Mm-hmm.
People tune in because it's Tony Romo. People tune in for Jim Nantz. They tune in for Al Michaels or John Madden. Like,
hell, people tune in for Joe Buck just to complain about Joe
yes.
Buck.
So and like nothing against any of the broadcast teams they've used. They're obviously they know football, whether it's they've done college games or they're on the second tier of CBS Sports. Like, they have good people. I like who they are, but they don't have the name recognition that's that has the potential of drawing people in to watch the games.
Yeah.
That's why they're paying. Was it Thursday Night Football? Who's
they're paying Al Michaels all that money.
Is it $18 million a year because it's Al Michaels,
right?
And that's so Prime's got that money. So you know what? You want to come see Al Michaels do the game on Thursday, and you're going to hear something good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even then, you think about the XFL, the first version. I mean, there was a reason why they hired Jesse Ventura to do the games. I mean, Jesse Ventura knew football too. I mean, let's not people forget about that.
100%.
He provided color, if you remember, and this goes way back. But he did the color commentary for the Buccaneers way back when.
Yep.
Under his real name. So I mean, and that was the magic of Howard Cosell. People tuned in to see Howard
because you liked him or hated him.
Yeah. I mean, we do need a Howard Cosell nowadays. So I still say, the minute he went off the air, I mean, sports, as David Letterman once said, sports was much more interesting when Howard Cosell was covering it, because he asked the hard questions, and he asked the hard questions. And again, he was a character. He was one of those characters that, to explain it to people now, it's hard to explain, because it's like,
he would last less than a month if he was on TV today.
Oh yeah.
He couldn't. He would do 1 or 2 games because he got away with saying a lot of things because of him being Howard Cosell.
Right.
But he would not get away with nearly the things he said in today's. And granted, if he was a broadcaster today, that time in the 70s, it was a different time to be able to use terminology and say things and imply things. But that character today would just disappear. Like he would.
Oh, he'd be gone. He'd be gone so quick.
It's like the old Jimmy the Greek. It's like he was gambling when gambling wasn't cool, but CBS knew they got ratings from him.
They did, and then they fired him when they knew it was just completely untenable at that point. I
Oh,
mean,
he had no
because
value anymore.
yeah, I mean that when he opened his mouth and the whole story behind that, um, Rich Padinsky. Did you read the book about the NFL today?
I haven't. I've not gotten to it yet.
Okay, so Scott and I
Yes, I heard.
I read it
It
and
was.
it
It was.
is
It was a
fascinating.
great. I heard that episode. Yes.
It was Scott and I interviewed him from the 55
Yes.
yard line. It was just one of those. It's like because it wasn't anything related. I'm like, let me see if I can get the guy. And then we talked and the stories he told, but again, football in the 70s. I mean, that's why you and I grew up. That's why we fell in love with pro football back in the 70s because there was just something about the 70s, the way the football games were presented, the way everything, it was just the entire, maybe, and I think the other part of it too was we were a captive audience too. We didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot of choices. And we grew up in a day and age where we didn't have a 24-hour news cycle. If we found out about who was leading the league and doing what in the newspaper, because we looked at the numbers, and then we had our half-hour pregame show on Sunday. We didn't have sports radio, so not that the good old days were, not that those days were better, but I think for a sports fan, it just made you wanting more,
Yeah. It was
and
simpler.
it was simpler. Um, and you didn't have people screaming at you all the time. You didn't have people say, "Hey, look at me." But I mean, when it comes to spring football, I mean, social media is obviously important. But I would love to see some of that old stuff kind of come back in a way. And I know we have the XFL. They've got their show on ESPN. I think in many ways that they're in some ways they're trying, but not obviously trying hard. But again, we live in a different age now where you can't replicate what happened in the 70s now. I mean, there's just no way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, going back to what I said earlier, um, with broadcasting TV. So let's just say with the XFL, okay, how do we fix this thing? Well, if people are cutting the cord, well, you're going to two options, either streaming or aerial antenna. And the thing is with aerial antennas, you got side channels, and maybe it's at some point the networks are going to start utilizing those side channels more. I know before I left, I was running an antenna on my basement TV, and I would have to scan regularly.
Yep.
But then new channels would pop up, and
Yep.
so yeah, no, but the technology's changing, and I'm kind of going on and on about it. But the bottom line is the XFL, the ratings went up for last week. Oops, and the ratings went straight in the crapper this week. I don't know. I mean, and so are the where are we at with the rest of the games? Are the rest of the games for the remaining of the season going to be on ABC?
ABC and ESPN,
Okay.
ESPN two. There's no more.
So
There's no more FX games.
okay, so maybe hopefully we'll see a pickup, and hopefully we'll
Yeah.
see the ratings start to go up. Seeing something really we've never seen with the XFL, the ratings actually starting to rise. So maybe and then maybe that'll give us a good gauge. So maybe by this time next year we're talking about all the games on ABC
Yep.
because that would make the most sense if the league really wants to survive. But I would have thought they would have figured they had 2 years to prepare for this. I would have thought they would have figured this out, you know. But again, I'm just a
But
dude sitting way over here on the other side of the world. What do I know?
and they could be on ABC for all the games, but they don't. It's going to cost a lot of money
Yeah,
because you're bumping things. You're going to have to go in there and have a game if you want to have a game on Friday night, two games on Saturday, a game on Sunday. You're
yeah.
bumping. The ABC is not going to bump their primetime Friday night lineup for an XFL game.
Oh hell no.
So you can probably get away with possibly two Saturday afternoon games on ABC, but it really depends on what their contracts already have, because I can't imagine that ABC has a 6-hour block every Saturday in the spring of 2024.
Right.
I just don't see that happening. And then you fall back to Sunday afternoon. Whether they have X Games, I'm trying to think of what ABC runs with now.
Superstars? Oh no, that's way old.
Yeah, no, but it really depends. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even see them, to be honest with you. I don't even see them. I see games on FX next year because they need 12 hours a week of programming time.
Yeah.
And unless they want to go to Sunday or Thursday and Monday, I don't see how they're going to squeeze 12 hours out of Disney being on ABC every
Right.
week or being on ESPN, because you're getting in that time with the conference tournaments. Like it they're I understand why they wanted to jump ahead of the USFL and go right after the NFL. I get it. But this is the back end of it where you're limiting your options.
Yeah.
And that's where it is. Like, you can always start later, but now you're going to be in a direct competition with a competitor who owns it and places the games where they want to do that. Like, Fox can put the games on when they want, and then they
Hmm.
can deal off the games they want to NBC to have them show how they want. Like, I personally am looking at I like USA Network. USA Network has a history of showing sporting events.
Oh yeah.
So I like that option for the USFL. I like what they're doing is because they also control it.
Right.
So that's where the XFL is looking at, like, yep, everybody is exactly right, saying they need better times on ABC and ESPN. But unless they're willing to pay for it,
Yeah.
a couple weeks of 1 million viewers on ABC is not going to make ABC change something.
Yeah. Yeah. And the networks are, it's not like the networks need them, they need the networks.
Yeah,
Completely different business model with, say well, obviously with the NFL, but even with the CFL. The CFL, the TSN needs the CFL for that
yeah,
to fill in that programming that they don't have. Um, I mean, that one's kind of weird because they both really need each other.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with you, and I see your point. I mean, every time you and I sit down and talk XFL, talk TV, and everything, like, okay, now I understand better. So,
And looking at the CFL, be curious now with the new Montreal owner who has his own competitor to
yeah,
TSN. So it'll be a very I think it'll be at the end of the day a nice I read, and I know we're getting off the topic of the XFL, but I read a lot where people are very leery of this gentleman coming in. But I think the potential competition for rights, the
mm-hmm,
competition for viewers, and on how it's the content is placed out,
yep,
his connections to potential other ownerships within
right,
this, and then the development of within the last couple of weeks of the Commanders potentially being bought by a billionaire from Canada is like,
yeah,
there is quite a bit of money floating around here when you tap in the right people.
yeah, 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 and for the CFL, I mean, having maybe that if there's a competing media company tied in. I mean, obviously MLSE is tied in with TSN and all
Yeah,
that, but now you got somebody else coming in. It's like, okay, I mean, it can only mean good. You would hope
yeah,
it can only mean good things for the league, getting more money from TV revenue because the way it's been like, well, TSN's been the only game in town. Here's the money, take it or leave it.
yep.
Okay, well, we'll take it. But now, yeah, so yeah, fingers crossed that this is only, and we don't know yet, unless have I missed something in the overnight news here that's got buried? Have we heard any more about the CFL and the streaming in the States?
I have not. honestly, I was planning on it was going to be on ESPN again. I don't see a better option
I
currently for
I
them.
don't.
Like I just don't.
Yeah, unless the NFL, but it's not. The NFL network. They're not going to the NFL network. We know that much because
Well, I mean,
it makes no financial sense for the NFL to broadcast CFL games. Period.
honestly, I think it would.
You think so?
But I don't see like when you're looking at potential reach of viewers.
Yeah.
I think staying with ESPN is better than the NFL Network.
Oh,
I
I
just
agree with
don't.
you.
I mean, you're going to get the hardcore football people, and you're looking at summertime. The NFL Network is always looking for content.
Yeah.
I mean, you only can show so many. I mean, it's enjoyable to watch. But
Right.
only so many times you'll watch the purple people eaters tearing through the Boston Patriots,
But
right,
you
or
don't even.
whoever it
But
is.
you don't even see that on NFL Network anymore. They don't even cover.
No,
Yeah.
they don't go for that far back. But no, having like I liked when ESPN2 had those had Canadian football games on ESPN2 at 7 o'clock. It was great.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well.
So I think for reach, what does that mean when it comes to money for the league? I don't know, and I don't know what the other options are. But I think until an option comes along that's financially long term better, I don't see a reason for why they wouldn't want to leave ESPN just by the sheer numbers and availability.
Yeah. Or
Because
there's also the option they could always just put their games on YouTube.
they certainly could.
And if and they're going to bank on you know subscribers, and I mean that's another whole thing. It's the business model I don't understand with YouTube. I mean, you got the IFL and the all these arena league games, all these arena leagues putting them on YouTube. So what are they generating any money from the broadcast? And that's a whole financial. I mean, that's something obviously somebody smarter, way smarter than me, could tell me.
This is what they're doing.
Okay.
They're packaging in their sponsorships with you're getting a dasher board, your little sign along the football field, you're getting a program ad, and
Yeah.
you're getting a spot or you're getting a read on the YouTube channel.
Okay. And that's it.
That's what they're doing. Some of these games are getting good, and the nice part too is that game is up there.
Yeah.
So you're getting more and more views. It's not so much the value of having so many subscribers at YouTube is paying you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the availability of adding one more line in that sponsorship package to get something more from a sponsor.
Okay.
So it's like basically if you're doing it correctly, you're in your sponsorship packages on top of your in arena signage,
Mm-hmm.
your program, your website piece on the club, you're also on XYZ TV.
Okay.
So if it's the Orlando Predators, you're on every home and away game. You are on Predators TV, the broadcast partner, and it's free to watch on YouTube. So you're getting all this more exposure than just in this, that, and that. And then that adds into the numbers when the salesperson's going out there going, your message, here's what I've put together. Your message is getting out to 300,000 people, and this is how we're doing that.
Okay. Okay. All right.
It's no different than the real radio way
Well, that's what
of
I was
doing
just
it.
I was just thinking. I was just thinking, my idea of a media salesman is going, you'll appreciate this, is the old Herb Tarlick from WKRP.
Yeah. Hopefully without a drinking problem.
Right. Yeah. Herb had a whole lot of problems too.
I mean, that's why when you watch these games on YouTube, you have all these different segments, or you have this brought to you by this person, because that's a $2,000 sell. I mean
Yeah.
that's just basically how they're breaking that down, and then you get this glowing package at look. Like the package is worth $45,000, but it's 13,800 for you because you're making up numbers and throwing it down for what the value is. I
Right.
mean, that's what it is. Like that.
Huh.
That's what sponsorship is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, that's why I'm glad I have these conversations with him. Like, okay, now it makes sense because it's, yeah. And I'll probably forget this after, we push this out later and we'll probably be talking about the same thing down the road. But yeah, no, and, yeah. So I feel, I mean, you do get frustrated too. It's interesting to read your posts where you get frustrated. It's like, okay, all right. So I know if Dave's getting frustrated, then there's got to be you see things much more clear than I do. Period. Period. And
It just the I don't know. We talk about the excuses of why the ratings aren't there. Like, every week is something. Like I
yeah,
get it. You can't like you're picking a very busy time in the sports calendar for weekend events, and it's
well,
like
yeah. And now obviously the one excuse everybody had was pickleball. Well, they cut away to go to pickleball. I'm
I
like,
I, I would too. You know who was playing in it?
no.
It was it was they had a big thing. They sent John. It was John McEnroe and Michael Chang playing against Andre Agassi and Andy Roddick.
Oh wow. I didn't see
They
that part. That's what
they
happens when you only read the headline. I didn't
they
dig that deeper.
they brought all these, like John McEnroe is now a spokesman for pickleball,
Oh shit, I didn't realize
and
that.
they fly him around the tournaments to be like this like spokesperson for the game. Because I was watching the highlights of the match, and it was like they showed an epic rant. He uh he was hitting the ball, he was doing his
Oh
thing,
jeez.
and then his right foot went over the line. You can't get inside the front boxes,
Mm-hmm.
and they showed him just having a meltdown. Like he had this great shot. They go foot fault McEnroe, and he throws his racket. He just goes just doesn't lose his mind like he used to. But he
Right.
threw the racket, walked the side of the court. You could see he wanted to just lose it, but it was a family friendly event, so he didn't. But yeah, no,
I
that's a
didn't know
big
that. Well, that's what happened. I'm just as much to fault as other people are for not reading beyond the headlines. Well, at
yeah
least on the pickleball one. I'm like, okay,
yeah.
pickleball. Okay, well that to me, I'm like, okay, well that kind of makes sense. I mean, I just thinking it's like, okay, that's a classic ESPN move if there ever was one.
Yeah.
Um,
And the time block ended,
right.
and someone had a call going, the pickleball is giving us this much money to be
We're
on this
making
time
more
slot,
money to broadcast pickleball. Yeah.
and XFL gave us this, the game run long. Sorry guys,
Yeah.
we're out.
Yeah. No, I was like reading. I'm like, oh, okay. Um, it was kind of like one of those. I read it. I'm like, kind of shrugged my shoulders, and I'm like, okay, well, that kind of tells me where the league. You talk about getting bumped for pickleball is not a good look for the league. So
No,
it's like if the league were that important to ESPN, it would not have got bumped.
exactly. But there are a few NBA players who are investors in the new pickleball league who own teams.
Mm.
So there actually is like professional pickleball league starting up.
I do, yeah. Well, yeah, and I knew that, and
Yeah,
that's the other two that's competing for. We got all these different leagues that are starting up. You got
yeah,
lacrosse league, you got women's. I mean, there's so many professional leagues now competing for eyeballs.
yeah.
You go down the rabbit hole when it comes to ESPN Plus. I'm like, shit, I didn't know that was a league. I mean, back in the day, I mean, you had besides your four major sports, you had your PG, you had the PGA. Again, this is us growing up in the '70s. You had your
Yeah.
PGA, you had your Pro Bowlers Tour, and you had Wild anything else that was on Wide World of Sports. And but now everything's got a league. So
Cornhole.
yeah, cornhole. It's so. and maybe with all that said, then maybe I should just kind of tone it down with my criticism of the XFL because they got to compete against pickleball and cornhole and all these other things that you know, might give, you know, guys like Mike Mitchell another good reason to blame on poor ratings. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, listen, football is America's sport, and the XFL is a tainted brand. Let's not,
Yep.
let's not, the USFL too, in a way, but the USFL
Yep.
is not the USFL. And really, this is the thing with the USFL, and I'm kind of changing gears here. All of the USFL is a spring league, just completely repainted. I mean, it's not the real. It's nobody's even pretending it's the real
No.
USFL, especially when you get teams like the Memphis Showboats don't even adopt. Listen, if you want to honor the memory of the old league, hey, then bring back the Reggie White uniforms. If
Mhm.
you're going to be the Memphis Showboats, this blue and
I
gold, I'm like, okay, that kind of blows. Um,
mean, I guess I'm curious on what that settlement was with the former people looking to cash in on a
yeah.
name they let go 35 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious on how that all it was going to go away,
Right.
and they were look every one of those people were looking to get some kind of cash
Yeah.
because they waited till the opportune point when the game was just about to start, so they knew their money was there.
Right.
So, who knows at the end of the day what these guys wanted. This is what you want, fine. Here, just do this. Either you take this or you lose in court, and it's going to cost you more.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no way. I mean, there's no way that they were going to win any case they brought against. I mean,
Oh,
everything had lapsed. Everything has fallen to the wayside of claims that they have, and the name was there. And I understand that some people were bent out of shape by using it, but it's an identifiable brand
yeah.
to use.
Yeah.
I thought the Spring League name was just awful.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Yeah. It was, I mean, what, yeah. I mean, yeah, the whole, that, yeah, I don't know. I really didn't even know what to make of the spring league. And then they're like, oh, well, the players are paying the league to play. Okay, that's weird. And now, it, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's when I talk USFL. I mean, I talked USFL what 2 weeks ago now with Kyle Smith over at the USFL project. Um, I mean, all of us want spring football, but the original USFL is the original USFL,
Mhm.
and you know, the spring league slapping old logos um, doesn't make it doesn't mean it's a relative. It's just
No,
and it's not it's um, but it'll be interesting to see though. I mean, where we're at, say maybe 2 years with both these leagues, how things shake out. Because I got a feeling things are going to shake out. Because it kind of goes back to what you said, the kind of the folly. The XFL started way too soon, so maybe that's part of the problem. Um, and we'll see with the ratings. I mean, the ratings for the USFL, the XFL are going to get cut in half with the USFL starting up,
oh yeah,
or at
definitely.
least by a third. Um, so we'll see. It'll be interesting, even where
It,
we're at talking next year.
it will be interesting, and this is the last thing I'll say on the USFL and the XFL. It will be interesting, and I haven't had a chance to sit down yet and look at it, but I would be curious to see as we get towards the end of the XFL,
Mm-hmm.
the USFL starting next week, how the game times match up
Ah, yeah,
to
yeah.
see if one or the other can use it as a lead into theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm just off the top of my head, I believe the USFL has minimized the number of afternoons, and they are looking at late afternoon in prime time, where the XFL is only going to be in the afternoon on ABC until the championship game. So it'll be interesting to see how how that translates, how
Right.
that with a afternoon XFL game help the USFL and vice versa and how they stack up
Yeah.
because I don't see I don't see the XFL doing a million people on ABC and the USFL doing a million people on Fox. There's just not 2 million people looking to do that. Like I
Right.
just
Yeah.
or enough of a there's definitely crossover,
Yeah.
but I don't see people taking an 8 hour day to watch minor league football as they would the NFL 10 hour day.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's just no way. And also too, with the weather's getting nicer. People don't want to be inside.
Yeah,
Point blank. With autumn, let's face it, the way it's set up with football in the autumn is perfect because it's nice out, but the colder it gets, more people are inside watching
yeah.
football. And it's the complete opposite with spring ball. So,
And that
um,
and that's where with the USFL ratings, I, I don't I don't need them for myself looking at them to be as good as say the XFL
yeah,
because we're looking at it like in June and July, your TV pool is so much less. It's more of the potential viewers you have than necessarily the rating itself.
right.
Because in June and July, so few people are watching TV, period,
Yeah.
regardless of what's on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and the funny thing is too, it's even like here in Japan right now. So it's, with baseball season. It's really interesting, just talking about how things line up TV wise and everything. So the pro leagues are in full swing now. It's really interesting in terms of nobody really competes with each other, but they're on. So, like yesterday, a good example. I didn't realize that two games were on earlier than the rest. So there were some lead-in games, but I don't want to say it's things have been set up here for so many years. There's kind of a predictability to it. Whereas now with football in the spring, there really is no predictability. You don't know when who's going to be on at
Yeah,
what time.
no. I mean,
Oh, so
week to week, they don't. I mean, there's a game here and there on Friday. Even on Saturday and Sundays, the game times vary. It's like that's the one thing. It's you need that standard
yeah,
one, like the Sundays at 1, 4, and 7.
right.
Monday nights at this time. When they do Saturday, it's 12:30 and 3:30. Like you have that, and that's where Fox can do that for the USFL, where XFL can't. They don't unless they go to a stadium
Hmm.
or a network that will do whatever they need to do to make it work for them. But then you're
Yeah,
losing volume.
yeah. Yeah. And so yeah. The things have changed so much since we grew up in terms of just a
Oh yeah,
schedule. Yeah, um, but again, with media, everything's changed. Everything's gone to ESPN streaming. So, well, my friend, with all that said, here we are reaching. Well, we're well over the hour mark here. I don't even know how long we're going here. I'll figure that out when I post. So, well, listen, everybody. Hey, if you're still tuned in here, thank you very much for hanging out with Dave and I till the end. And we will hopefully be talking next week. If not, we'll definitely be talking the week after, um, depending upon our schedules. Spring is sprung here in Japan, and I know spring is sprung up where Dave is at. So, yeah, again, like what we said, man, people are getting out now. The weather's gotten better. It's been a crap. I know the winter's been brutal over where you're at. So, now obviously, back in Chicago, they've been getting slammed with storms. So it's like, oh, yeah, I'm glad I'm gone. But I live in a
yeah,
place with typhoons and earthquakes and the potential for killer tsunamis. So I'm not going to complain about being away from the bad weather. But yeah, we will definitely be coming. We got a few more episodes left. We're gonna make it through the season, and then after that, we may or may not turn our attention to the USFL. We haven't quite figured that out yet. I need to be able to figure out how to watch all the USFL games on streaming here, because I know with NBC, some of the games are going to be on Peacock, but not all of the games are going to be on Peacock, correct?
I'll double check. I thought they all were going to be on Peacock.
Oh, if they're all on Peacock, then I'm set because I got a VPN. If I'm, and if I'm going to do a sponsor, I want to do ExpressVPN because that's who I use to access all my games here. Because without them, I'm dead in the water, man.
Yeah, I will double check that. But I thought every game. I thought that was part of the announcement was every game will be on Peacock.
Okay. Yeah, our buddy Zach Kyleman, I didn't get quite a good gauge on that, but he was in the middle of moving to his new job, so him and I really haven't had a chance to talk much about US. And I haven't listened to their podcast. I feel bad I haven't listened to those guys recently. So, well, hey everybody. With all that said, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will hopefully be talking to you next week. If not, we'll definitely talk the week after. And again, we're looking at ratings and the business of it, not so much the scores and everything. I mean, if you're tuning into this to hear scores, you've already seen the game, so you know what happens. But it's the other stuff that we like talking about what's going on outside the lines and what we think. And again, we're just fans, and we feel the pain of low ratings and we get frustrated. But Dave and I are both older and seen these leagues come and go. We try to stay positive, but we're also realists too. So, and you know what? The news organizations out there, and if anybody's listening from any of those, just understand what you guys are doing is great as fans and everything. But you gotta if you're gonna write for a news site, you gotta be a journalist too. So start asking the hard fucking questions. And when somebody like Dwayne Johnson starts spewing PR, same with Danny. Okay, ask a question. Just don't take him at face value. The main question I wanted to hear asked was, oh, so how much in sponsorship is your tequila brand and your energy drink given the league to help make it run? That would be nice to know. Because, this is a business but again, nobody's asking the hard questions for the XFL. And I think, Dave, too, I think that's why we're not seeing any news come out about the XFL. I mean, there is absolutely no news coverage on it. You do a Google search of XFL news and it is crickets. So, listen, if you're an aspiring journalist or something, a blogger, hey, do yourself a favor, start a blog site, start covering the league, start asking the hard questions. And so that way, say for next year, we get more coverage of the league, because right now the news organizations aren't covering it. And the current XFL news organizations, while they are covering it, at least in many ways, aren't asking the hard questions that need to be asked, especially about ratings and all that. Putting a positive spin on stuff is one thing, but constantly saying, but the ratings are doing great, when the numbers really kind of say otherwise. But with all that said, that's just me on my soapbox, and I know Dave's right there with me too. But with all that said, hey, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will be talking to you next week.
The thing I love about the XFL is the heart and soul that these players show. For the love of the game, of playing football, and the opportunity of continuing to play the game they love here in the XFL.
A lot of you tuned into the XFL the first week. Unfortunately, most of you never came back. Well, we listened to you, and we've made the rule changes to give you what you really want. So come back. At halftime, we'll take you into the cheerleaders' locker room.
I would like to introduce all of you ladies to the one man that's going to be privileged enough to walk into your locker room with a camera. And here he is. His name is Bruno. Say hi to the girls, Bruno.
Hi, girls.
Hi. Have fun.
Here now, Vince McMahon. Thanks for coming, Vince.
Pleasure.
XFL ratings are down 75% from week one. They now rival the lowest ratings ever in prime time, not just for a sports program, but for any television show.
Right.
Can you guarantee me right now that there will be a year two for the XFL?
can I guarantee you that? I can't guarantee you that I'm going to be breathing in and breathing out after we leave this studio.
But you're pretty sure about that one.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure about the continuation of the XFL in one form or another.
Does that mean on network television and on NBC in year 2?
I would like to say so, yes. NBC has been very supportive. I think that the difference here, Bob, is that people have to understand that when you start a league like this, I mean, this is not the easiest thing to do. I mean, let's face it. So when you start a league like this, even though we have many advantages, it's not easy. You make mistakes along the way. You correct your mistakes. You focus. And you go forward in terms of brand building. And this is brand building. This is not just television programming. And that's a thing I think that a lot of people, quite frankly, miss. I mean, it's all about, the 13 weeks and out or less in terms of television programming these days, especially with the attention span of a lot of the programmers on the network. So, I mean, again, I think that once the affiliates understand that this is brand building, I think we're in it for the long run with NBC is certainly my hope, and they've given me every indication that that is the case.
It's one thing to try to build a brand on cable or elsewhere, but even on Saturday night, which has not been the best night for the networks in recent years, that airtime is meaningful, it's important, and it can't be sacrificed week after week if some improvement isn't shown. That's just common sense, right? Significant improvement.
Well, certainly I don't think anything is going to be sacrificed. At the same time, again, I think there has to be a longer range approach, that this is not just programming. We're in it for the long run. I'm very long range oriented in everything that we do business wise. So, I mean, I think that once the affiliates catch on to that, and stay with it, I think we have to make a marked improvement in our television ratings. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed in them, no doubt about that. I think that, we started out with this huge television rating and dropped off,
Curiosity factor, promos leading
I think
up.
it was curiosity factor, but I think we made some mistakes as well. I mean,
what were the biggest mistakes, and what can you correct, or is it too late in some cases because people have gone away?
I don't think it's too late. I think that, the caliber of the play initially was not as good as it should be. The caliber of play now is fantastic. It's great. It's the
same players by and large. How in the space of a month can the caliber of play improve that much?
It's real easy because, we didn't have the luxury of starting, a 4-week preseason like the NFL normally does. Again, this is a startup league, Bob. You got to give us a little bit of a break here, and the media does as well, because we knew we were going to make mistakes, and we have made them. So had we started up in a longer preseason, then the teams would have been far more cohesive. They would have looked much more like NFL football, although we said all along this is not NFL football. So I think the caliber of play now is extraordinary. It's exciting. You've got wide open offenses now, and a lot of points are going up on the board. You've got innovations which we have made, and quite frankly, some of the network execs that cover the NFL are already talking about stealing them.
You mean audio and having the cameramen on the field and
Sure.
a different point of view, that sort of thing, different production
Sure.
techniques.
Right. I think they'd actually steal the scramble if they could. That's kind of
Instead of the
interesting,
coin toss.
Right. We call it the human coin toss. So the idea here is to start up a league in which players have opportunity, otherwise would not have an opportunity. It's a very family-friendly in terms of ticket prices. We've been averaging some 27,000 people coming to our live events, which I would suggest would rival, if not supersede, what the old AFL did when they first started, and even the NFL. Let's look at this realistically. The NFL has been at this for 75 years. It's not fair, to jump all over us and, okay, when are you guys going to die? Is it over yet? Can it please be over yet? 75 years of building a brand, and the NFL is where they are now, more power to them. I think they do some things wrong that we do right. And I think that it's going to take a little time to build our brand. And you can't do it in 1 year's time. It's unrealistic for anyone who wants to partner with us to think that you can build a brand in 1 year.
What about this analysis, which seems pretty much on the money to me? It's not WWF enough for that crowd,
right.
And it's not good enough football for the sports-minded crowd. It's neither fish nor fowl. People took a look, and they split.
I don't think, again, I think that that's not necessarily unfair, what you just said. I think our research indicates that the World Wrestling Federation fan likes his diet of WWF entertainment in its proper form. I think that in terms of a football fan standpoint, they like football. I don't think that they mind any of the rule changes that we've made, you know, any of our brand of football and bringing the game closer to the fan. The in-stadium experience is off the chart when you come to an XFL game. It's off the chart. You're really almost on the field. You feel so close to the play. So these innovations are fantastic. I think that again, the caliber of the play more than anything else, we weren't quite ready to play the kind of ball that we are currently playing. And it's my hope that, you know, that the media, you know, which has been, I think, somewhat unfair, you know, in jumping all over us and asking for this damn thing to please go away. You know, I think it's unfair when you consider the caliber of play that we have now. All I'm asking is just take another look at it now and judge it on its merit or lack of merit as it relates to football.
You came to this with plenty of power, with expertise from a certain area of television and entertainment. Mm-hmm. You came to it with celebrity, but in most people's minds, not with prestige because of the type of programming you're associated with. On the other hand, NBC has prestige. Right. They risk not just dollars, they risked prestige. Do you think, is your sense as you deal with the people at NBC, that they're feeling the heat on that front?
Oh, I think they're feeling the heat. I mean, again, I think that the media made certain that they're feeling the heat. You know, I mean, they're asking Ebersol, you know, please get the hell out of this thing, you know. And Dick is very a stand-up guy and a friend of mine, as you know, for many, many years. Bob Wright as well. I think that they're in this thing with us, but at the same time, I don't know how much heat they can take, and I don't know what prestige means anymore, because again, when you think about brand building, I don't think the XFL has hurt NBC in terms of prestige. How? Because they've been associated with me individually, or, you know, the smear, if you would, of World Wrestling Federation Entertainment? I mean, is that it?
I think there's a general perception that while the XFL doesn't go anywhere near where the WWF goes, that it's a low-rent form of television.
Have you seen any of the games? Tell me what is low-rent.
Not so much within the games. The pregame show, especially week one,
we don't have
was one of the most mindless things I've ever seen.
We don't have a pregame show.
Week one, there was a pregame show.
We don't have any pregame shows, which is one of our problems. No, we've never had a pregame show.
What was the pregame show that aired in Los Angeles, in New York, and in other markets a half hour prior to the first game?
A local thing that the NBC O&Os put together, of which we had nothing to do with.
But it left the impression. It left the impression in many quarters that this was a low-rent deal, and I'm sure that NBC is hearing it from affiliates, from station managers, and from some portion of the audience saying not just that we don't like this, so we prefer to watch something else, but that we're offended by this association.
Well, you know, if that's the case, you know, then they have to do what they have to do, and just like you do, Bob. You know, I mean, quite frankly, from my standpoint, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm what makes this company. I'm what makes my company and this country go round and round. I take risk, calculated risk. And quite frankly, if you go back to when we first made this announcement of the XFL, we didn't have any partners. We were going to do it all on our own, okay? So I think it is a viable business. I think that that when you come to a live event and you see all these young people in the stands having a wonderful time, I think that our television ratings are going to build back. I think that we may throw a few things in there to get them back in terms of promotions and things of that nature, and we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to spend some money, you know, that we otherwise may not have to spend. We're going to have to convince the media, quite frankly, to cover this for the event that it is, not the perception that you, as an elitist in my point of view, or others would have about it ain't low-rent football. I'm sorry. It's kids out there playing their hearts out, if you've watched it.
No one dismisses the players and coaches who are trying to make a living in a football league. No one dismisses that, and there are probably very good stories within that. There is an association, though, that in the minds of some is a plus. That's what brought a lot of that 10 rating the first week. People saying, well, I'll take a look at what Vince McMahon has cooked up, and I saw the promos. There are others who are put off by that. You bring both positives and negatives.
Who's put off? And in what way? What have we done What have we done in anything with the XFL? What, we have cheerleaders? We said we're right out front we were going to have cheerleaders, nice-looking ladies that you were going to get to know, unlike the NFL, sort of has them but doesn't have them kind of a thing. If nothing else, we are brutally honest about who we are and what we are presenting. But there isn't one thing in that game that I know of that we've presented that's salacious in any way.
If the ratings don't turn around, will you be tempted to make it more salacious?
No, we just did that. You know, we just did, as a matter of fact, you showed the clip at the top, you know, of some sort of thing whereby we were going to go into the Orlando Rage cheerleaders locker room.
Right.
Okay. It was a spoof. All right. And
the guy hit his head, couldn't get inside, and
right.
You tried to revive him as he lay there in the corner.
Right. And we said it was a blatant attempt to increase television ratings. As promos all week long. That's what we said. And it was, you know, but we were winking at our audience. They understand what we're doing. And I believe it's the quality of the football that's going to bring viewers back.
If you could be guaranteed that it would increase ratings, would you fix the games?
What a ridiculous statement.
It's not a statement, it's a question.
It's a question. I beg your pardon. It's a question. No. It's either football or it's not. Now, if it's entertainment, then no different than I did, you know, a long time ago, you know, when my predecessors tried to pawn off that wrestling was sport years ago. You know, I mean, that's absurd.
And you came out and said it's sports entertainment and
it's entertainment.
The matches are staged.
Right, absolutely. So how could you possibly script a football game? You know, you know, boy, you're giving me credit for a lot of talent that I don't think I have, okay? I mean, it was like, I mean, you have to catch the ball. I mean, you know, I mean, you have to run with the ball. You know, you can't script football. And
isn't that really part of the problem? Because there's a whole lot of football on TV.
Right.
There's the NFL, and it has a long season, and all the college games.
Right.
And you have the World League in Europe, or the NFL Europe, I guess it's called. And if people just wanted to see football, they could pipe in Canadian Football League games. So if you can't do something significantly different at the edges, what's the real incentive to watch these games? Well,
the real incentive to watch the games is because it's the best football other than NFL you can possibly watch. It's not, you know, European ball. You know, it's not college ball. This is great football. And we didn't show that in our first several weeks. We also had some production problems, things of that nature. We also had the wrong announcers out there. You know, I mean, that's part of our problem as well. We've corrected production. We've corrected announcers as we're going forward.
Are WWF announcers the right announcers for football?
No, they're not. No, they're not the right
Will you be able to get top-flight announcers? Because I know within the business, and this is not from people necessarily who wish you ill, but within the business...
Oh, I'm sure there's no one who wishes me ill.
Well, I'm sure there are many people who do, but I think some objective people...
And why would they wish me ill? Hey, tell me, why did they want to wish me ill?
The show's only an hour long. There are many people, we'll get to it in a minute, who consider what you've done on the WWF, while successful, to be objectionable. We'll get to that in a minute. A lot of first-rate announcers are reluctant to be involved in this type of programming because they feel that it carries a stigma.
Well,
that it's not something that would look good on their resume. On the other hand, some established guys have done it,
right,
but many have backed away or would have no interest. So my question to you is, if you've got to get what you call the right announcers in there, what's your talent pool for that?
We'll have to create talent. Talent's out there. You have to go find it.
You call yourself a risk taker.
Right.
You have been that.
Right.
If this turns out to be a grand-scale failure, what impact will that have on you?
Well, you know, I get knocked on my keister. I dust myself off. You want to let me finish here for a second, pal? Shut your mouth and let me answer the question, all right? I'll be happy to answer. You got a situation that you don't know what you're talking about. This is the Bob Costas Interrupt program, right?
It's a characterization I think few would share, but it might work for you in this instance.
It worked for me. I mean, take a look at the tape when you play it back. Right. How many times did Bob Costas interrupt Vince McMahon before he let him answer the question?
Just to try to keep you on point. Go ahead.
Sure. So, I mean, again, I think that, you know, when you look at everything that we do on balance in terms of entertainment, you stay with the storyline, Bob, okay? Our women are extremely strong. Now, I would suggest that the degradation, as you called it, of Trish, which was of her own volition, by the way. I wasn't making her do that. This is a soap opera. If you stay tuned long enough, boy, I would suggest I'm likely to get mine as far as that character is concerned, as far as the Vince McMahon character is concerned. The women involved in World Wrestling Federation from China all the way down, are very, very strong-willed women who, generally speaking, at the end of the day in the soap opera, get what they want and then some. But you have to stay tuned, Bob. It's not fair to take one little excerpt of this and one little excerpt of that and then generalize, okay?
Let's end on this.
We have to end? I'm having fun.
We have to end. I'm enjoying it too, but Bob Knight is waiting, and he deserves his time as well.
Coach Knight.
Coach Knight is waiting. Safety of wrestlers. Not long ago, you settled a wrongful death suit with the widow of the wrestler Owen Hart. Had to pay $18 million. He was killed or died during a show in Kansas City when executing a maneuver. Have you pulled back on the level of risk in some of these maneuvers?
As far as anything aerial, absolutely. We would never attempt to do anything like we were doing with Owen again, because out of deference to Owen, if for no other reason. But yeah, I mean, again, I think that the risk factor increases, with the athletes, no different as it does in all of sport, by the way, and here we have the greatest entertainers in the World Wrestling Federation Entertainment, and I dare say some of the greatest athletes as well. They do jump that risk thing quite often, absolutely.
Vince, we've got to go.
Oh, it's too bad. This is such a delightful show, Bob. Thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate your coming on.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a delight.
And there is more just ahead, my friends.